More activity at Nancy Guthrie's house today as questions continue to swirl about whether the case is going cold. Clearly, however, investigators are still working leads. They were at the house at Nancy Guthrie's today. It appeared to be processing evidence, still focused on that masked suspect, the so-called Nest Man, who was seen on surveillance, as well as other reports from neighbors. So what is going on with this case? We're going to try to separate truth from fiction.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
We're back. What's up, SDS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the global phenomenon, and I guess YouTube took us so literally that tonight you're unable to chat in English. That is how literal they have taken us. You know, the whole catching up with Mr. Beast, the Joe Rogan thing started as a joke, but after being ranked 88th in the nation just before leaving for a week, when it comes to news podcasts, I'm starting to think it's really happening. Maybe I'm delusional, and I've been calling it a global phenomenon. So maybe now YouTube's like, we can't allow English into this global show. But YouTube, what is happening? Apparently there's a glitch today, and you can only chat non-Ingles. So I will do my best with 7 years of French, for which my mother did all my homework. But this is Surviving the Survivor, the global phenomenon that brings you the very best guests in true crime. Don't think I wasn't monitoring this for a week. I think the COE has some photos of the trip she'll put up at the end. If you have any way to make your way to Iceland one day, and it's not easy to do. It's actually not that hard to do, but it is an absolutely amazing country. Shout out to Ivar, who was showing us around Iceland. We climbed glaciers. We went into ice caves. We sat in hot water, the old thermal lagoons, but it was amazing. It's also good to get a check out of the day-to-day. And guess what? I'm right back in it. I'm actually brawling with Karm right now, so feels like I'm right back at home. Let's dive right into this. As we've had on the show before and welcoming him back, one legendary homicide detective. There'll be another joining, but this is Phil with the PHIL, Phil Ramos, retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police detective, three-time Officer of the Year, undercover narcotics, and a homicide detective. He was there for Tupac Shakur's autopsy and still finds time to ride his Harley. Phil Waters, FIL Waters, retired Houston homicide detective, will be joining. He might even be here. I don't know. But Bob Krieger, he is with us. Bob Krieger is a former Pima County deputy, retired just back in January, from what I understand. Also a retired SWAT commander and a tactical leader within the Pima County Sheriff's Department, serving for about 25 years before just retiring. So welcome to the show, Bob here. And guess what? He's here. The other legend is in the house, and it's perfect timing and perfect spatial timing for Phil Waters, who likes to be bottom left corner. We got a great panel here. Thank you all for joining. Phil Waters, if you didn't catch it, and Bob, if you didn't catch Phil, Bob is retired Pima County Sheriff's Deputy and SWAT Commander. Phil Waters and Phil Ramos, both retired homicide detectives. So, Bob, let me start with you. You spent 25 years there. Is this the oddest case that you've ever seen in Pima County and perhaps in your time in law enforcement? And what makes it so unusual?
First off, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. And the short answer is yes, without a doubt, the oddest case I've ever seen. I retired, like you said, a few weeks ago with just under 30 years of service. And I ran the gamut with my assignments and never seen anything like this. I've worked kidnappings, I've worked homicides. I've done a lot of that on the SWAT side as well. And this is the most unusual thing that I've encountered since I started my career back in 1996.
And I mean, I totally understand, and I agree with you. And I was there, and I covered. I was there for Gabby Gifford's attempted assassination, a horrific case. There was a case involving a woman named Kay Reed that I mentioned on this show when I was there reporting, who was dragged out of her house, and they never found her body. But I think that the killer was convicted ultimately. But what is it that makes it so weird if you try to articulate it?
So the biggest thing with this one, with Nancy and her going missing, it's not that it happened; it's what's happened after it, and it's basically been radio silence from the suspects. You got some ransom notes through TMZ, whether they're related, whether they're not, that's yet to be determined. But typically, when a kidnapping takes place, you're going to get some contact. You're going to get emails, phone calls, messages, proof of life pictures, videos, all those different things. And in this one, that just has never happened. And so that makes it so much harder for the investigators. They've got over 40,000 tips that they can follow up on, but we all know what a lot of those tips are like. And there's a lot of stuff on them. Excuse me. And so just the lack of very solid evidence in the case to get you on a path of, okay, let's go this way, let's go that way. That's really the unique thing about this one.
From Watercolor Dog, STS Hagli Ospiti Migliori. I'm going to read all the comments. Phil Waters, I don't know if you caught this, but there is a glitch with the YouTube tonight, and there are no English comments. They're all in foreign languages. Bonjour tout le monde. So we're going to have trouble. I know what this means because my mother-in-law says it. Ay, Dios mío. YouTube, how am I not suing you in a class action suit for the amount of monopoly that you have over this whole whatever that I'm in, this medium? But then you have my chat comments in foreign languages that I cannot read. What is going on in the world? I don't know. Matt Finn, he's a friend of mine, Phil Ramos, and we'll get to Phil Waters in a moment, but he works at Fox News. He said that since Savannah Guthrie's latest Instagram post, which we'll play in a moment, they've now received, I'm surprised this number seems low, 1,500 additional tips on top of the tens of thousands of tips just since her video came out yesterday offering that $1 million. Phil Ramos, you want tips, but how problematic can the number of tips that they have to triage through be at this point?
It's like we've been saying all along, that just the vast number that they have to be triaged, they have to be assimilated into which ones have actual meat on the bone, and versus the lady that wants to talk to the dog because she's clairvoyant. You just have to go through all of that. And I feel for that staff. Usually it's the administrative staff and clerks, and very few detectives are going to be assigned to that because they're needed someplace else. That's what it boils down to. It's just, I can't even imagine the logistics involved that department is going through right now. And but that's the way it goes. That's how most of our cases go, not to the volume of tips that they've had, but we've all certainly had our share of 700-800 tips coming in on big cases. But it's just mind-boggling, the different aspects that are occurring still today, going on 3 weeks later.
Yeah. So Phil Waters, the big news today is that there was quite a bit of action at Nancy Guthrie's house that had not been seen for several days. The COE will put in some video, but we had sort of the typical Fed SUVs rolling through. We had some cruisers rolling through. The New York Post has a take on this and some reporting on it, but I'm just curious from your experience, what does it tell you that they were at that house today? They apparently pulled a car into the driveway. They were escorted. They were there for quite a while. They were looking at the area, I guess, where the Nest Cam would be. You'd assume this is all stuff that has been done or, thought of before now. So why today?
Well, greetings, y'all. Good to have you on the panel, Bob. I have read that there were some prosecutors on the scene today, and they were escorted, I'm sure, by, now I don't know if those were AUSAs or if they were local Pima County people, but may have been a combination of the two. And they were escorted by either FBI or Pima County detectives or deputies. So I don't find it particularly unusual. this type of an investigation that's gone on this long. I guess the prosecutors wanted to see for themselves what the scene looked like and where they were able to recover evidence from, and so forth and so on. So, in the context of the overall investigation, I don't find it terribly unusual.
Phil, there's a question I can actually read, so I'm going to take it, and it's for you, Ramos, not Waters. For Ramos, do you think it's possible that Ness cameraman didn't arrive with a full backpack, and he may have already entered came back out and been preparing the front for an exit? Has that gone into your calculus at all, Phil Ramos? I mean, there's 20 million variables and possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a possibility. I don't think it's very likely. That's kind of like going backwards. So it's something that we've all been talking about. What could have been in that backpack, because it was pretty full, and it looked like whatever those items were had some structure to them. So it's anybody's guess what was in there. You know, we've run the gamut from a change of clothes to Xboxes to whatever could be in there, and we just won't know until it's ever found. But you know, and I agree with Phil. I think you get to the point where you want to run your prosecutors through the scene and show them exactly what you have, where it came from, what you don't have primarily as well, and just give them an overall idea of what, you know, when we've done that before, it was because we had made enough progress to show the DA said, look, this is what we got. Do you think it's enough to prepare an affidavit, or are we still lacking something from here, or are we lacking something from there? So it could be they've made progress that they just haven't shared with us, and we know that there's quite a bit of that, and rightfully so. That doesn't need to be shared, but that's a step that you take when you're getting ready to start putting paperwork together, possibly for an affidavit.
Yeah. Well, the New York Post has a slightly different take on it, and I'm going to run that by Waters in a second. But Bob, to you, since you're kind of boots on the ground, I mean, first of all, is the media coverage locally, is it dying down? Is it still, you know, leading the 10 o'clock news there? They have 10, not 11 o'clock in Tucson. But yeah, is it still everywhere you look? Is it still what everyone's talking about?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's Tucson, and it's you know, worldwide coverage right now. I did notice, however, today on the front page of the Daily Star, which is our local newspaper, there wasn't an article about it, and that was the first time I noticed that. So take that for what it's worth. But it was on the 5 o'clock news just before I came on here. Just little blurbs. It might be dying down a little bit, but still kind of leading the way.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw you into a hornet's nest here, but now that you're retired, maybe you've got a little more freedom. But what's your take on this battle, this seemingly ongoing battle between Chris Nanos, the sheriff there, Pima County, and the FBI? It seems, I mean, still like not everyone's sure who's running the show here.
It's not surprising at all. Sheriff Nanos has a history of not playing well with federal partners. When I first started hearing about the clash at the top of who was doing what, how it was being handled, it's unfortunately par for the course, because everyone else on the panel can tell you, you can't run an investigation that way. You've got to work well with your partners. You got to maximize those resources. And whether it's ego driven, like, look at me, I can solve this before the FBI can, or whatever the reasons might be, it's unfortunate, but it's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, do you have a sense of what it stems from? Is it ego-driven? Was there a particular incident that, I don't know, that rubbed Nanos the wrong way, where he just doesn't want to play nice with the feds?
Years ago, in his first term, he was investigated by the FBI. One of his handpicked chief deputies pled guilty to a RICO charge. During that investigation, another chief deputy committed suicide just before his interview with the FBI. Sheriff Nanos came out at the time and basically badmouthed the FBI to the public. It's all over the internet still. It's all over YouTube, all those comments. And I imagine that's where a lot of it stems from. And, you know, whether the decisions are now currently based simply because they're a federal partner, that he doesn't want to play well with them because of other political issues that are out there right now, because the department has turned down requests even before I left from federal partners to help them. Well, they're the feds, so we're not going to help them. That's their problem, which is it's asinine, quite honestly. So there's just a continuation of that. And if you look at him, it's very much, this is my sandbox. He doesn't get along well with other local sheriffs. Anyone in the state will tell you that. He doesn't communicate well with any of them. It's always been, it's about us, for him, as opposed to the more important picture of what's best for the victims, the families, the people of Pima County, and all of that. Well, so there's a long history there. Sorry for rambling.
No, I'm glad you pointed out about the victims for sure. But what's it do, or what's it doing right now? I know you must have, friends who are still in the force. So what's it doing for morale? I mean, are people just bummed out about this behavior? I mean, are they at their wits' end?
Yeah, specifically related to this, the morale has been bad for a while. This is kind of now the icing on the cake for a lot of folks. We've had a lot of attrition, a lot of early retirements, a lot of folks leaving at 18, 20 years to go, be a cop somewhere else. They're not done being a cop. They're done being a cop here, which again is unfortunate. I know that the boots on the ground are working hard. I've got my feelings about how things are being run at that level. Input that's probably unnecessary for investigators, but it's just how things have always been done within the agency. And it's that top-down pressure that's probably causing a lot of the most individual problems for the primary investigators. Now, I haven't spoken with any of them specifically, but I know them all. And there are things that I've seen and things that I've seen reported that are very consistent with things that I saw while I was there.
Well, thank you for that clarification. And it appears English is coming back into the chat. So Phil Waters, I saved this for him because this might get his panties in a wad, as he likes to say. So the New York Post, Phil Waters, they have reporting out about what was going on today. And they say investigators, according to their reporting, are conducting what's being described as a quote unquote final or concluding forensic sweep of Nancy Guthrie's residence, typically signaling that major physical evidence collection is nearing completion at that location. Now, they go on to stress it does not mean that the case is over, but it does indicate that leads from the house itself may be largely exhausted, and there's talk that maybe some people want to get into that house to even live there, which I'm having trouble, wrapping my head around. But what do you make of that, Phil, that it is a quote unquote last pass through the house right now?
It may be. Again, if it's prosecutors going through there, they may be having a fresh set of eyes from the prosecutor's side of it, take a look and ask questions and that kind of a thing. I mean, I don't know. I would say at this point, the problem I'm having, I've worked a real kidnapping. I've not believed this was a kidnapping from the beginning, but that's just me. And I think, Phil, you and I agree on that, right?
Yeah. 100%.
So, yeah, I don't think this has ever been a kidnapping. And you do have the, listening to Bob give the history here of the good sheriff. I'm very familiar with that type of an atmosphere, having worked at a sheriff's office and having been involved in a large-scale kidnapping investigation that took in 2 counties, the FBI from 2 different offices within the Houston area, and a local police department that was within one of the counties adjoining the Harris County. So the situation there was that the county, not Harris County, but where the actual kidnapping took place, they were, like Pima County is, the lead agency, period. And the captain that was over investigations had the same kind of feelings toward the FBI that it sounds like the good Sheriff Nanos has. And he was paranoid about their involvement. Well, the problem is that we recovered her car in an apartment complex in Houston. So we had brought in the FBI because of where it was recovered. It was a full-scale operation. I mean, it went on for a while. And we sat in an office with all the representatives from all those agencies there. And the captain had kind of warmed up to me because we had this discussion. I'm trying to tell him that the FBI's got resources that none of us have, and we have got to have them here in support, because there's things that they can do that we cannot. And finally convinced him to buy off into that. But we sat in a conference room with all these representatives. There were, I'm going to tell you, a dozen agents, detectives, deputies, and so forth there. And I made clear to everybody present that the lead agency was this sheriff's office, and that everything that we developed, we needed to filter it through them. And that seemed to settle things down, and that's what we did. And everybody was on board for it. So we got that settled up front. It doesn't sound like that's what's happened with Sheriff Nanos. So, so I kind of understand his view. And if he's got this background, like Bob's talked about with the Bureau, you're never going to unring that bell. I mean, that's the way things are. That's the reality. What I have a problem with about the release of information, Sheriff Nanos was abysmal. I mean, from the very beginning, the first press conference was horrible. Mm-hmm. Then he made it worse with the second press conference. And he wants to be, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying he wants to be the face of this investigation. And he is the lead agency, so I get all that. The problem is that all of that PR stuff should have been handled by PIOs. And he doesn't, that's out of his wheelhouse. I mean, Bob, tell me if I'm out of turn here, but it appeared to me, because I've done I don't know how many press conferences, pressers throughout my career, and he just was not comfortable in that setting. And it made him look, I don't know, kind of trivial, some of the stuff that he was saying and doing. And so, but then when he says in the second press conference, we're not having any more press conferences, then what does he do? He starts doing these individual interviews, which to me are even worse. And it makes him, and he says stuff, and it just doesn't look, the optics are just not good. Then you couple all of that with things that get out. Bob, you can probably confirm this or deny it, but there was some discussion about one of the aircraft search pilots that got in some sort of a conflict with the sheriff, and he turned around and said, well, you're back in patrol. Mm-hmm. And that happened, right?
Correct. Yes, it did.
Yeah. So I don't know what caused that, but when you're taking a resource like a pilot, where hundreds of thousands of dollars have been used to train these people, and I don't know, whatever that belly button was, it gets him popped back to patrol. So you gotta, you hear these things. There's always two sides of the story. I get it, but these things do not reflect well on the department, and the way the investigation is being run, it tends to reflect on that as well in a negative way. Then you couple that with, and we've been seeing it a lot here in the last, I'd say, week and a half or so, a couple of weeks, unnamed law enforcement sources, unnamed federal sources are putting out this information, and all it is doing, to me, it's hindering the investigation in terms of the public persona, of the public outlook on this thing. And it is further dividing whatever this thing is between the sheriff and the feds. And I just think that's improper. I don't care who's doing it. I don't care if it's Pima County guys doing it. I don't care if it's the FBI doing it or anybody else doing it. That's wrong. They should not be doing that. That's a bunch of crap. So what is the point of even doing that? Saying, hey, look, nanny poo poo, we should have done this and we should have done that shit. I just don't. I think this investigation has got so many moving parts in it, and it's a difficult investigation. It doesn't need that kind of distraction and that kind of crap. So, and look, the detectives on the ground, they're doing the work. And I just hope and pray that they're not being distracted by all the freaking noise. And I would imagine they're not, because they're driven. They know what the goal here is. They know what they need to do, and they're out doing it. And the agents, the field agents that are there in support, that are bringing in resources that Pima County doesn't have, they're focused. So all this other stuff, all this distraction that's going on up here at the top among people in the hierarchy of the sheriff's office and the FBI, they need to pull it back. If y'all aren't going to get along, if mine's bigger than yours, if that's a discussion going on, it needs to stay within that group and not get sent out all as a big distraction for the overall investigation.
Yeah. So thank you, Phil. And Phil Ramos, both you and Phil Waters say you agree that this is not a kidnapping from the get-go, which begs the question, and you and I have talked about it, you think maybe a home invasion gotten bad, but any more thoughts? Because people are asking, well, if it's not a kidnapping, why was she taken from the home? And what's your response to that?
Well, because once they got in there and she realized what was happening, there was a confrontation, and it ended up with her spilling blood, however that occurred, and these guys panicked. Maybe the confrontation was either fatal or almost fatal, and so they grabbed her and took her out of there. That would be the reason why that happened. They just weren't prepared for a kidnapping, and that's what it boils down to. There was just no plan going in there for a kidnapping. They're just, because of the amount of time they spent in there. And I still maintain that they surprised her when she was in bed. She got up and tried to fight them, and that's what happened. She was injured, and they panicked, so that they took her out of there. I think the one thing that everybody has finally come to learn is that the TMZ happy hour show is over and done with. Thank God we haven't heard any more of that nonsense, especially since they raised the reward up to $1 million and time has passed and nothing came of that. So that was a distraction that just had to be annoying as all get out for the boots on the ground that were trying to get something done, and they have to deal with this crap.
Yeah, well, Phil Ramos, let me just dive back in with you for 1 second, because I think most law enforcement agrees that this guy was sort of bumbling around, the so-called nest man, the suspect. And I guess the question is pretty obvious, which is, then why is it so hard to find him? Is it just because he could be lurking anywhere? I mean, that's a question everyone seems to be asking. Well, law enforcement is saying this guy was not a professional, not good at what he did, yet we're 25 days in, and it appears we're just bumping into walls.
Well, I think the obvious answer to that is they just don't have anything to go on as far as who he is. He was disguised pretty well. There still hasn't been a connection with whatever DNA was in there. Now to come find out the DNA that was inside wasn't strong enough to get put into CODIS in the first place. So that's going to be a hindrance for them. You know, everybody was thinking, oh, CODIS. Well, yeah, it's great. It's an amazing tool. But there are certain protocols of a DNA profile that have to be met before it even gets into CODIS. So this guy could very well have a minor criminal history, and his profile, his full profile, may be in CODIS, and it may not be. They just haven't been able to match that partial profile that they got inside the house to anybody in that CODIS database. So it's I think that the guy is extremely lucky that he hasn't been caught yet, and he just hasn't made enough mistakes to get caught. And obviously they just don't have enough to go on for one specific person, you know, the guy on the patio. There very well may be one or two others involved. We don't know that yet, but it's a matter of they're going to focus all their efforts and attention on identifying this guy. And they're back to, I hate to say it, they're back to square one with DNA.
Yeah. Phil Waters, and I'll get back to Bob in a second, but Phil, same question to you is being posed, which is, if you don't think it was a kidnapping, I mean, do you have a theory in your own mind about what happened or what went wrong here and why Nancy was pulled out of the home?
Well, I agree with Phil. I think it was a burglary. They got in there. Perhaps they didn't expect her to be there. And she resisted and didn't tell them what they wanted to hear from her. And I'm just kind of presuming there may be two people, but whether there was one or there was two, the big question has been, why spend 40 minutes inside the house? Well, something went horribly wrong inside the house. And now you have at least what we know is a woman who is injured. And what do? There may be the possibility that she's dead right there. I've kind of been of the side that I don't believe she was removed from the house alive. And so now what do? So we're spending our time now trying to figure out what the heck do we do with a body. And so we know that they took her out the front door, and we know we have blood drops out on the front porch. It looked to me like it was something, probably a head wound, because of the nature of the drops and the vertical drop of those of the blood drops. You didn't have spatter. So, and that trail apparently goes out the driveway to the street, which means what? Somebody made a phone call and said, you need to get a vehicle over here because we got to get her out of here. That's why it takes 40 minutes, because you got to wait for people to show up to get this body moved. So I'm just saying that, and in terms of the DNA and all that stuff, I mean, people are watching too much television. DNA is not always the silver bullet. And in a case like this, you're going to have a whole lot of different pieces of evidence that are going to be looked at in the totality of this investigation. And you're going to have a bunch of strong circumstantial evidence that we hope is going to eventually point to an identifiable suspect. And then once that person gets identified, then we get all that circumstantial that all comes together, and hopefully they get a confession out of whoever this person is. But I will tell you that, the fact that they're not, they don't appear to be terribly sophisticated, but the fact that they haven't been caught now really is not a big mystery to me. You've got to conduct this investigation. You've got a lot of good evidence here, but and right now what's happening, all the things that were taken out of the home, all the evidence that was taken out of the home, the digital evidence, the DNA, it's all being processed now. And this takes time, especially this digital stuff. I'm convinced that all of the little costume the guy had on, from the mask to the backpack to the gloves to the jacket, I think he bought all that stuff at Walmart. I think he bought all that stuff at one location. The backpack and the face mask, as I understand it, come back to exclusive to Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
So it only makes sense that he would buy all that stuff at one time. And we see this all the time.
Yeah.
People walking into stores, getting stuff to continue their criminal activity, and they're just walking around there buying all this good stuff, and there you go. So that is good news, because Walmart has some amazing ability to track purchases. Now, I don't know how far back they go. I would certainly, if I were the detectives here, go back at least 6 months. You've got a specific pieces of equipment here, the backpack and several items that were purchased. And Walmart, I tell you what, I worked a case where I had Walmart, and thank goodness for Walmart, because they video every transaction at every register, and what was scanned. And you've got amazing surveillance cameras around that place. We popped a license plate off of a car where a capital murder suspect got out of in the parking lot 200 yards away. So Walmart has got all of that. It's just a matter of, can they track down those specific items to a specific date being purchased at the same time? And I don't know if they have the ability to do that, but I would imagine that's what's being processed right now. So all this digital stuff, the Google stuff, I mean, it takes time. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it just does. It's just not it's not a television show.
Yeah. Bob, to you, first of all, I just want to read, because I made it a point to put this in here. Anyone who knows anything at all, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. We have a lot of people in Tucson, in the Arizona, but specifically Tucson area. So you call 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 800-225-5324, 800-225-5324. There's also the FBI.gov website to go to. But Bob, just back to you for a minute. Forget the Chris Nanos nonsense here. Just from a purely investigative standpoint, when you're working a case and you're now day 25, and if the New York Post is right, they're doing kind of a final walkthrough here just to make sure they didn't miss anything. What happens to morale at that point, where you kind of get the sense that you're back at square one 25 days later?
I think the morale stays where it is. I'm sure they're a little frustrated, but like Phil had said, that there's so much evidence in this case. There's so much work going on behind the scenes by so many detectives and so many agents, that there is still a ton of work to be done. So they're going to stay focused. They're going to continue to do what they can do, making phone calls, knocking on doors, all of those things. And yeah, most cases, even homicides included, they're solved within the first few days. And a lot of that comes from just bad guys like to talk. They like to brag about what they did. And I think that's another thing that's very unique about this, that if something went wrong inside that house, they've just remained quiet about it. They didn't say they were there. They didn't say what happened. They've kept it in a very small circle. And that's why our phones aren't lighting up, and, the people their cellmates are giving them up and things like that. Because that's very typical in a lot of criminal cases. And luckily, that's how a lot of crimes like this are solved. But to the morale, strictly to the folks working it, they're going to work hard. They're never going to slow down. They're going to keep doing what they have to do. But I do know, especially that first week, some of them were working close to 100 hours that week. And, it's just, that's a lot of time to put in. And yeah, you get frustrated and kind of defeated that, hey, why isn't this going better? But they also know how investigations go. They're familiar with this. They know that it takes time. They know it takes sometimes days, weeks, months for DNA to come back. So they've done this all before. Maybe not at this scale, but nothing is new in this investigation to any of the investigators, from the newest one to the most senior one. It's frustrating to the public in general, because like some of the other guys have said, they want that immediacy, and that's just not the reality of police work most of the time.
This is an interesting comment. Thank you for that, Bob. Knitting Kitten here. Put the stem of the plant into hole on top side of Nest camera meant for removal tool that comes with Nest. If you don't have the tool, you can use anything pointy in the hole. Push it down. The camera will pop out of its base. Most people thought it was an amateur move, but maybe he knew that you needed something in there in order to pop it out, which it looks like they eventually did. And then you see here, new ordinance tomorrow. They are, Bob, back to you on this, and COE will bounce his videos. Let me put this up here. Sorry, you do it, COE. Okay, so this is a no trespassing sign. These are going up. Bob, have you driven by over the previous couple of weeks, and what kind of madhouse circus has it been?
It's been a madhouse. I've been out there, honestly, almost every night for the last probably 2.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
For various reasons, all around the house. It's a small neighborhood, and if you're familiar with Tucson a bit, there aren't sidewalks. So about a week ago, they made it a one-way street, gave the west side of the roadway to all the media to stage, and turned it into a one-way. So it's a bit of a madhouse, and I know these no trespassing signs went up maybe 2 or 3 days ago, just kind of for show. There weren't, from what I saw, no one was rushing up to the house or anything like that, minus the pizza guy. But as far as the media went, they were respectful. They were outside, but yeah, it was probably 2 blocks long, especially at the 6 o'clock hour local. So that prime time. There were a lot of live hits going on, and a good two to three solid blocks of disruption for the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, now a lot of them are getting effectively booted out because they're not given anywhere to park or stay. A lot of people were apparently camping out in their cars as well. People here are getting Israel Keys vibes off of this. One other question to Bob, then I'm going to play the Savannah video from yesterday. It's the most recent. I'll get Phil Ramos to weigh in on that first. But, Nanos and Nanos keep saying that, he's not commenting. I'm not commenting. And then he just keeps commenting. And one of the comments he made just the other day was he thinks that she's nearby, that she's local. I'll pull up the exact quote later on. You get the sense that, Nancy Guthrie, alive or not, is somewhere nearby, that this perp lives in the area and that this is local?
My very first vibe, seeing the video for the very first time, thought that looks like something a Tucson criminal would do, kind of awkward, not real sophisticated. But I also know that even, if you're familiar with the Pima County area, Tucson Metro, it's huge.
Yeah.
So do I think she's nearby? I honestly don't. I think regardless of what happened inside the house, she was probably taken a good distance away. And when I say that, you could drive, there's a lot of little, smaller little almost enclaves of structures in Pima County. You've got 3 Points, you've got Arivaca, you've got these small little, towns, so to speak, in unincorporated areas. But it takes an hour and 45 minutes to get to some of these places, just driving. And that's typically where we, in the past, we've seen if you want to hide someone or something, you go to those areas. Or quite honestly, worst case scenario, you just drive out in the middle of the desert for 2 hours, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and you could get rid of a lot of things out there. And no one will probably ever stumble upon it. Maybe they do in a day, or maybe nobody sees it for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, I had mentioned 3 Points on the show. I literally pulled up on a scene there where there were Bud Light cans hanging off a tree as a decoration and a shotgun in a bucket, and that is not a joke.
Nope, that's 3 Points. Yep.
Yeah, that's 3 Points, and 3 Points is a place where people are living in some trailer homes, other homes. It's a peculiar place, and I get exactly what Bob is saying. You can be out there and never be seen or heard from again. It's got some Deliverance vibes, if that's fair to say. But all right, so here we go. And a huge thank you to Icicle Aksu from the great country of Turkey for gifting these memberships. This is Savannah from yesterday. Then I'll want to get both Phil's takes and Bob's take on this. But Phil Ramos, I saw this just when I returned, I think, or was on the way back when I saw this. I think I was still. No, you know what? We were in Iceland with Ivar, and Ivar's daughter, great guy, was studying criminology. So she was all over this, and he was interested in hearing this. And even in Iceland, in Reykjavik, they know about Nancy and Savannah Guthrie. And this is, we were all listening to this together. Take a listen.
There.
Take a listen.
Hi there. I'm coming on to say it is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed. And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then of worrying about her and fearing for her and aching for her. And most of all, just missing her, We know that millions of you have been praying. So many people have been praying of every faith and no faith at all, praying for her return. And we feel those prayers.
I'm going to hold it right there and break this up into a few pieces. Phil Ramos, I was visibly shook by how just tired and worn out she looks. Like she hasn't been eating. I don't want to say she's aged because she'll get herself back over time, but it looks like she has aged a lot in just 24 days. Your initial reaction to, again, seeing this, and one thing that someone pointed out, which I don't think we have heard before, is she says that she was taken from her bed, specifically from her bed. So all of that put together, what do you make of it?
Well, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, you can just see the toll it's taking on her. It's all over her face. And of course, she's going to be worn up, beat up. It's just, you just feel so bad for them. I think now, as we're in week 3 of this, I think they're coming to the realization that mom's not coming home. And that's what it's going to boil down to.
Sorry, I was talking. It is devastating to me, and it's a family that's literally being tortured. And without going into details, we know that people have pointed the finger at other family members. The New York Times has a piece about one of the band members, how that person's been living in like a horror show because everyone thought he's responsible. The New York Times did a whole piece that they've literally been hiding in their home with the lights off because people are coming by saying, you did it. When they don't have that kind of information. Phil Waters, I'm going to continue to play this here and then get your take on the back end of this part.
Please keep praying without ceasing. We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves and is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and with her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy. And if this is what is to be, then we will accept it. But we need to know where she is.
Phil Waters, I'm going to hold it right there. I mean, horrible tragedy, a beautiful literary line, blowing on the embers of hope. And she says she realizes that her mother may have gone home. I mean, you are a man of deep faith. This is when it's tested the most, and it seems like her faith is holding up. But I got to tell you, if it was me, and she's not me, I'd be, I think this is a time when I would have a lot of questions for the man or woman upstairs. Phil Waters, but your thoughts on how she's handling this?
Well, I would say it's heartbreaking. Anybody that's been through anything like this, and I've sat with hundreds of people, families that have gone through the loss of a loved one through an act of violence. So I don't, it sounds like that they're grounded in their faith. And I would say this, we're not promised, when we have that personal relationship with Christ, we're not promised that there's not going to be any storms. What we're promised is that he will be with us in the storm. And that's what she's expressing here. And I think that's awesome that they've come to a realization that they're going to, they want their mom back, and whatever condition that is, they just want her back. And that's always the end game when you have a situation like this and you just don't know. It's like almost having an accident, right? That's worse than actually having the accident sometimes. So this not knowing, it's tough, but and they're praying for a miracle like everyone is. But she's realistic enough to understand that what we may get back is just her body, which is important. That's important, and there needs to be some peace if that's in fact what happens. And talking about the sheriff making comments about she's nearby and that kind of thing, that's saying something that doesn't really say anything. She's saying that we want her back, and so forth and so on. And I think Pima County's like, what, 9,000 square miles or something like that, Bob?
Yeah.
There's no telling. Yeah. And a lot of it's desert, right? Or most of it's desert.
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, that there's no telling where they may have taken her. And, nearby is relative to 9,000 square miles, right? So, it's just a horrible situation. I tell you what I was thinking about the other day was regarding Savannah individually. After this is over, and let's hope it ends with her mother being brought back, and we get a suspect in custody, get somebody charged, and have an understanding about what happened and why it happened. But what this has done to her on such a personal level, I don't see how she ever goes back to work, at least not in the capacity that she was in. I think this has had a devastating effect on her, not unexpectedly, but and so I was thinking about that, and of course I was in the middle of my prayer time and just trying to give her a hope in the future, no matter how this thing comes out.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, thank you so much. COE, apparently they're all singing at Nancy's house live right now. Can you see if you can pull that up? People are saying it's pretty incredible. Group of people have gathered and I guess are singing either prayers, hymnals, just one person singing. Oh, well, that's different than groups of people singing, which is what I've heard. But if that person is worthy, let us know, and we'll pull it up. This is the scene from earlier today. I don't know if that's the singer right there, this one woman, but people are watching this. Let me just finish playing. That's the photo of her singing. There you go. Let me just finish this up here. COE, can you bring Nancy Guthrie back up? I think it might loop.
We need her to come home.
Yeah.
For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery. All of the information about this reward and the details is in the caption below. You can call the 1-800-TIP line. You can be anonymous if you want. Someone out there knows something that can bring her home. Somebody knows. And we are begging you to please come forward now. We also know that we are not alone in our loss. We know there are millions of families that have suffered with this kind of uncertainty. And for that reason today, we also are donating $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for their work in helping families who are coping with loss and actively looking for those who are lost. We are hoping that the attention that has been given to our mom and our family will extend to all the families like ours who are in need and need prayers and need support. So please, if you hear this message, if you've been waiting and you haven't been sure, let this be your sign to please come forward, tell what you know, and help us bring our beloved mom home so that we can either celebrate a glorious, miraculous homecoming or celebrate the beautiful, brave, and courageous and noble life that she has lived. Please be the light in the dark. Thank you.
Wow. Bob, you know, obviously STS Nation, we have a lot of people who are survivors themselves here, have been through very difficult situations, and our hearts go out to the family. My heart goes out to the family. I know people that know Savannah. I do not know her from my time in broadcast news, but you can tell she's just literally being tortured by this. And I think anyone would be. I know I would be if I didn't know where my mother was. It's the person I think most of us are closest to in this world. But Bob, you know, a lot of people were screaming at this, to themselves, saying, well, why didn't you offer $1 million from day one? And apparently there was reporting that Savannah did want to offer this. Could you talk a little bit about, you know, sometime, and I think it was Chris Nanos who said, no, let's not do this. Too many people come out, too many tips. What are some of the issues with too high a reward money too early on? And I know there have been studies where high reward money doesn't necessarily correlate to people turning somebody in necessarily.
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is, like Savannah said, somebody knows who's on that video. People have watched that video and said, I know who that is. And you hope that they can come forward. And I also know that everyone has their price. And so by upping it, maybe that person, I liked you, but I don't like you that much. And they decided to follow up on that tip. Going back to your first question, as far as what, why someone would have said, we don't want to put that high dollar amount out there too early because we're going to get these crazy tips. Well, guess what? The crazy tips are going to come in anyway. This is a worldwide known case. So all that did was take that person whose dollar amount might have been, $500,000. We'll just throw that out there. And it's taken them 25 days to get to the point to where they're willing to call in. So if it's a little more work on the front end for the investigators, there are literally over 40,000 tips. If this would have been possible early on and it would have got information early on, I'm sorry, I think that would have been the right thing to do. It is what it is. It's the family, and it's someone's mom. No matter how famous Savannah is, or the family, or the dollar amounts involved, man, that's someone's mom, and I would do anything. And if someone told me, hey, you can't do this right now, I might have some choice words for them and do it anyway. Granted, you want to trust the people that are investigating the case for you, but at some point, you have to have some input. Again, if it would have got a tip sooner, 25 days sooner, that would have been worth whatever extra 100,000 tips someone had to look into. That's my take on it.
Thank you. Kelly Wynn here with the super chat. God bless his grieving family. and the many other families experiencing the same turmoil of missing a loved one. And it's important to point out that Savannah Guthrie also offered $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, saying she realizes that, you know, they're not the only one in this situation. Phil Ramos, one of the things I noticed, obviously without picking on her, is that towards the end, specifically or more particularly about the money issue, she was reading off of something. I'll mute it here, but if you pull it up, and let me get rid of this comment here. But if you look towards the end, right over here somewhere, she does start to look down. How much of this is, you know, super intentional by law enforcement? Right there, she's looking down, and how much of this is Savannah saying, "I want to get in front of the cameras"? Do you think?
Oh, I think it's 90% Savannah, and I think that you know, at the end there, I mean, look at what this family's going through, and to have that measure of honor and dignity to help other people when you're suffering such grief, and making a separate donation to an organization that helps people that, I mean, we just don't see that anymore. I mean, it just is just amazing how this family, especially Savannah, is holding up through this from what we can tell. Now, we never know what's happening at night at 3 a.m. when she wakes up screaming for her mom. But I think that's a measure of how she was brought up, and a reflection on her mother directly from Savannah. It just amazes me that she would put something like that forward, and it's honorable. It's an honorable thing for her to do.
Thank you, Phil Ramos and Phil Ramos, Phil Waters. We're just getting to know Bob Krieger, but two of the best, man, and also two of the most empathetic guys who have dealt in a world filled with really horrible people that harm other people, and they have kept their moral compass about them. Phil Waters, this comment is interesting to me because I was just thinking, you know, we got rid of TMZ finally talking about the ransom demands. Those weren't really ransom notes. There were money demands from somebody, and someone said, you know, is money the root of all evil? But this question here, it ain't about money, folks. It's a vendetta here. What do you think of that, Phil Waters? Is this some sort of vendetta where the person's not willing to come forward because no amount of money, that they're purposely just here trying to grind into the Guthrie family for whatever reason, where, you know, could be some conspiratorial reason related to the Epstein files? I've heard it all at this point.
Yeah, I've read all that nonsense. A vendetta, really? I mean, come on. Usually when you had, at least in my experience, when I've had these types of cases, and we had some detectives sometimes that were given to the conspiracy aspect of different investigations, but I can tell you every one of those has turned out to be a very simple 1 + 1 = 2. I would be shocked. This does not say vendetta. It doesn't say kidnapping. It doesn't say anything in regard to that sensational stuff that people put out here. And I think it's disrespectful to the family to put that crap out. So you know, I contrast this video with the first one. So the first one was orchestrated, put together by people at the behavioral science unit at the FBI. And it comes off as just being what it was, shallow, didn't really mean anything. This is her in her most sincere moment. And she's looking at, you know, she looks down, she's making sure she's looking at the bullet points. She's going to make sure that she says what needs to be said here. And it is coming from her heart. So there's no posturing here or a scripted monologue like the first one. And so I give her a lot of credit. She's carrying the burden. She's the one that's well known, and she's for the whole family. and this business about rewards and that kind of thing. Look, that becomes a timing thing. I know I've been involved where we've had high-profile investigations, murders in Houston, and there were people wanting to jump up right off the bat and let's offer a reward. Well, let's wait a minute here. Let's see what evidence we have. Let's see where it leads us, and then there will be a discussion about, is it now time to do that? So, and now I'm sure that discussion took place, and now they have the families is coming out saying this, because the FBI came in with 100,000, right? Mm. And then the FBI came in with the second 100,000. So this thing's up to 1.2 million in a reward, and I guess a little $2,500 that was with whatever Pima County's version of Crime Stoppers is that was offered at the beginning.
Yeah, one of them was a private attorney, and I don't know if that was a PR stunt, but the sheriff made it.
I don't know, but what my point is rewards and that kind of thing become a timing issue. You don't want to get out there too early, and so now we're almost 3 weeks into this thing, and now it's trying to move the ball. Let's try to move this thing a little bit. And I'm kind of with Bob. There's some people out there right now that know this guy or these guys. They know these people, and I'm telling you what, 1.2 million can sure make you question your loyalty. So this may be what it takes, and this may be solved by a phone call. I'm just telling you that I've had those cases. You get that Crime Stoppers call, and it is anonymous. I mean, it is anonymous. We couldn't even get access to who made that phone call unless they agreed to give us access. So, look, somebody needs to start doing the right thing. And the right thing is to make that. And if it's prompted by 1.2 million, so be it. But make that phone call and say, hey, here's the guy. And you're going to have to provide some information that's not known in what we know now that's out there in the public. It's going to have to be something that's inside the investigation that's going to say, hey, look, this may be a righteous caller. And then if it does bring it to the suspect, and of course it's all based on an arrest and a successful prosecution, and then when those folks get paid, no one's ever going to know. They're given a number and they go to some box somewhere and they pick up their money and they go. Mm. So I'm sure there's somebody out there thinking. And I've talked about it too. If there are two people involved in this thing, I'm sure one is probably thinking about it and the other one is thinking about it, how they can parlay what they've done into making a big payoff, perhaps. And of course, that's probably not going to work out for them if they do that. But the best kept secrets, I've said it before, the old Hell's Angel adage: the best kept secrets among three people are when two of them are dead.
Yep. Well, we'll see if that ends up happening here. Alice Feld's an attorney in the Miami area. Bob, this is a difficult question to ask, but must be posed, I guess. What are the chances the case is never solved? I think you think it likely will be because your former colleagues are still hard at work. But what do you say?
That's a 50-50 question. It's impossible to say. What I will say is, someone brought up early in the podcast about Kay Reed. She's been missing for 20 years and the body's never been found, but they did get a conviction. Linda Watson's another name that pumps up in the Tucson area. So cases can be solved even without bodies. They can get convictions from that. The family, above all else, will want closure. And that's what's most important is remembering the family and the victims in this. My police instincts would say it's going to get solved. And it might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be for 15 or 20 years. But it's going to be one of those cases that it'll always, have some notoriety to it, some reason to look back into it and another set of eyes and those types of things. Sooner or later, it will be. And what that solved looked like could be a lot of different things. Could be a deathbed confession. It could be, whatever it might be. But hopefully, whatever that looks like, the family gets what they can to come to peace ultimately with it.
Yeah. Bob, another question for you. There was reporting yesterday that the sheriff pushed back on, because there's two photos of the nest man, one where he's got a backpack on and one where it appears he doesn't. And so the reporting, I believe it was yesterday, was that whoever this person was basically was there on a previous night casing the joint. And Chris Nanos, the sheriff, came out and said, there's no way for us to say that. We don't know if it was 2 nights or the same night. Any thoughts or theories after looking at because that came up very early on. Some people say, hey, he doesn't have a backpack in this freeze frame, and others said in this one he does. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any investigative thoughts on it?
I do. And when it came out a few nights ago, I looked at the 2 different pictures closer than I had. And in the one without the backpack, it looks like that jacket's almost a camouflage type jacket. You see some patterns to it that aren't consistent on the other jacket. Now, it could be the IR light, a lot of different options for that. But I also was told that they were from specifically different nights. And that's through the reporting that I've heard as well. But, folks that I've talked to said, and if it was from different nights, that shows a level of sophistication to the criminal, that they did a scout of the house, that they were there on a different night doing whatever it is they were doing. And maybe it wasn't as random as a burglary gone wrong. It definitely wasn't a home invasion that I would call a home invasion that's violent and kicking doors in and things like that. But there was a reason, there was a time. And if it was a different time and they left and they decided to do it another time, that shows, like I said, a different level of sophistication and a thought process to why they're doing what they're doing. Because obviously, if it's a burglary, you want to get in when no one's there. And if there's other reasons, you want to do it under the cover of darkness, when the neighborhood's darkness, when you're looking around, the people aren't out walking their dogs and things like that, which happens, 1, 2 in the morning. But I'm sure there's some metadata somewhere that can confirm or deny whether that picture was on the same day, regardless of how they got it. There's a bit or a byte that's going to have some data attached to it. And if it is from a very specific day or weeks or even several days earlier, that's a different conversation, I believe.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And the sheriff went on to say, look, there's no timestamp, but to your point, Bob, there's got to be metadata associated with it where they'll be able to figure that out. But Phil Ramos, that's kind of a big deal if it is true. And I will go with Bob over the sheriff at this point. He's getting information that it is from 2 different nights that this guy was at the house. How does that, or does it reconfigure how you're thinking about this? That sounds like a more, like Bob said, thoughtful perp here, maybe a more professional perp even.
Yeah, I agree with Bob 100%. That would change the scenario completely if that's the case. And my question would be, when did they figure that out? Did they just figure it out a day or 2 ago and they've had that information for 3 weeks? That should have been considered right away, because as soon as that video came out, we showed it how many times that night. And there was that one picture of the guy standing there without the backpack and standing back. So that was something of interest, which, we all discussed the different hypotheses on that. And it was just all that speculation. But if they had that information back then, that certainly would be something that very significant to have known. And the investigators would have wanted to know that right from the get-go instead of figuring it out 3 weeks later. I would, if I was one of the investigators, I'd say, damn it, how come we didn't know this before?
Let me get back to Bob and then Phil, just a couple more things and we'll get final thoughts, I promise. But Bob, one of the other interesting things, a neighbor of Nancy Guthrie just the other day, it was in the last day or two, said that she saw what she described as a suspicious young man walking in her neighborhood about 2 weeks before this all happened with Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. Her direct quote is, he didn't have your typical walking gear on, and he had his hat pulled really far over his eyes. The woman's name is Aldine. I'll leave out her last name. She spoke to Fox News Digital. People don't know the area that well. Bob, you and I do. This is a affluent area, but the desert is just a strange place. There's no sidewalks. It's pitch black. You kind of know who's in your immediate vicinity. But from an investigative standpoint, Bob, what do you do with that? You and I both know there's a lot of Tucson's a weird place. Let's be honest. They say keep Portland weird. Well, Tucson's probably a lot weirder. There's a lot of transients. Mm-hmm. There's dinosaurs hanging out at McDonald's, all kinds of weird things. There's Paul Bunyan hanging out on Stone. There's weird things in Tucson. But how do you go about tracking down an individual with his hat lowered over his eyes in this type of neighborhood? I mean, you'd think that surveillance cameras would be doing more work than we've seen up to this point.
Yeah, you would hope. And, we in law enforcement, all of us have gone to that suspicious person call, just someone walking through the neighborhood. They didn't quite look right to someone, so they call it in. Doesn't mean they're up to no good. They might just be walking. Now, you already hit on what's unique about this neighborhood. You don't randomly walk through this neighborhood. This neighborhood, it's tucked away, very little foot traffic. Any foot traffic in there is typically going to be families who live there, which is why they live there. If that was called in, the good thing would be it falls within the Pima County Sheriff's Department jurisdiction. They would have responded because we, unlike a lot of agencies, respond to every call, no matter how minor it might be. We have sometimes the resources. It might take a little while, but we'll get there, or they'll get there. Sorry, I'm retired. And if they did have some sort of contact with that person, there'd be a record of that. Now, going back and trying to reinvestigate it weeks after is going to be very difficult. The way specifically Nancy's neighborhood is set up is, I'm certain 95% of the folks have cameras, but the houses are set so far back off the roadway that unless they have like a front gate camera that's outward facing, you are probably not going to get any footage from the roadway from someone walking. There's just so much brush on every property. That's a perfect image right there. That if you look behind her house, that's the front yards of someone else's house. So you hope that you might get a glimpse of it. And I know early on there were videos from other possible burglaries 5 miles away. And again, all you got to do is show that. And if the investigators have it, within a day, someone's going to identify a person, even if their head is pulled down, even if, because if you saw your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother walking down the street or a video, like, oh, that's Joe, I know that person. So if they have some sort of video from a neighbor's house, it'll identify them pretty quick. But again, in that neighborhood, the likelihood of that happening is probably pretty slim.
Yeah. I was going to hold off, but let's start to wind it down because I want to be respectful of these guys' time, which is very valuable. So Phil Waters, he is the legendary homicide detective. He's investigated over 400 homicides during his tenure at Houston Homicide. And like Phil Ramos, he was also undercover narcotics. The guy had a mullet at one time. He's also the real-life Magnum PI with not one but 2 Ferraris and spends 6 months out of the year in Hawaii, which is why I say I want to be a detective when I come back for my next existence on wherever I'm existing in the future. But Phil Waters, to you, before your final thoughts, we've heard a lot about DNA too. Everyone was waiting with bated breath about this one black glove that was like 1.9 miles from the home. Went through CODIS. There was no hits. Turned out it wasn't much of anything. But now there are these quote unquote mixed DNA samples that they have from, I guess, within the home, where the intimation is that they're going to be using IgG or investigative genetic genealogy. And then just to quell everyone's nerves, Chris Nanos decided to make it a point to say, it could take years for that. We didn't see that with Koberger. It took days, if not weeks. And with the Golden State Killer, do you have faith here in investigative genetic genealogy? And your final thoughts here, Phil Waters?
Yeah, I wish we had it when I was working. So that was right on the cusp of really rocking and rolling when I retired. So it's a great asset. But to piggyback on what Bob was talking about this information from this woman, I question the credibility of now this woman comes out almost 3 weeks later and says, I saw somebody walking in the neighborhood. So, yeah, did she report it then? I mean, why is this coming out? So, this stuff that comes out like this, I question it. It's just my nature as a detective. You want to look behind it, because there's always a backstory behind these kinds of things. So, and coming up with that kind of stuff, I mean, who knows? Did she actually see that, or did she see somebody, and it was the lawn guy next door, and now she needs to come out and get her face out there and get her 15 minutes? I mean, and you're talking about something else that the sheriff has said. With all due respect, I wish the sheriff would keep his mouth shut. If he's going to release, do I get an amen on that, Bob? I will tell you, anything coming out of that department needs to be through a PIO or just make a press release. But this sitting down with individual reporters and saying stuff, I don't know. He thinks it sounds good. He likes the sound of his own voice. I don't know. But, at the very beginning of this, I was very supportive of the sheriff in terms of what we were seeing. And I understood what he was, trying to accomplish. And he was kind of bumbling and fumbling. But now, 3 weeks into this, I think he's made some incredible public relations errors. And it's because he won't shut up. It's because he just wants to keep freaking talking. And it's not making him look competent, I don't believe. And it makes the whole thing very unsettled. But to wrap the thing up, people need to get their heads straight about an investigation like this and time. I mean, I heard somebody asked, I think it was Nanos, was this a cold case? I mean, really? Do you even understand what the requirements are to move a case from an active investigation to a cold case? And just a stupid. It's a question that is only to evoke some sort of sensational response, and that just is just such a disservice, I think, to the family. It's disrespectful. I just think people just get so nutty about this. The TMZ guy, that was all about him inserting himself into and now it becomes about him. All these bogus freaking emails, those should have gone right to Pima County and the FBI. They never should have been sent out. And I just think some of the things that are now being released by the sheriff, he needs to pull it back. And quit saying so. It might take years. Why would you even make a statement like that? What was the point? So, and I do think people, though, when they hear things like that, initially, especially and the things about the cameras and the different pictures and the this and the that, and people are picking it apart and trying to find, the big clue and all that. A case like this high-profile deal, this is the nature of the beast. This is what happens. And again, my closing comments here are prayers for the Guthrie family, prayers for the detectives and the agents that are on the ground trying to make this thing happen. And they're the ones that we need to be thinking about. All this other stuff is a bunch of noise and it's a big distraction. But I guess in a certain way, it keeps all of that crap off of the guys that are doing the job. So, let that all sit over here while these guys are doing the hard work and the heavy lifting.
Thank you, Phil Waters. Over 400 homicide cases investigated at Houston PD. Not far behind him, Detective Phil Ramos, Las Vegas Metropolitan PD, 3-time Officer of the Year. Guy carried $1 million in cash through a casino to infiltrate the Cuban mob. Not a lot of people can say that. He was shot at also. He was at Tupac's autopsy. Also, the list goes on. Phil Ramos, since I was getting nervous that Phil Waters was going to be like, hey, Joel, do you know what it takes to make a case go cold? And I have no idea. So my question to you is, And we pose that question, which Phil is saying is for sensationalistic purposes, and I really don't know the answer. Is this case, does it have the possibility to go cold? What does that mean? What is the threshold to call a case cold, Phil Ramos? And your final thoughts.
I mean, there's a possibility, but you're not there by any means anywhere close to it. As long as you have one lead to follow up, it's not a cold case. And with all the tips that they're getting, this is not going to be a cold case for quite some time. I easily see this being actively investigated for 1-2 more years, because the things keep coming in that we don't know everything that they know, and nor should we. So they're just going to keep plugging away. They're going to ask for, have another detective come and look at something you've looked at 3 times and say, am I missing something here? Tell me what you think. Look at this picture, or look at this piece of evidence we have. What do you think? And you just keep going and going and going until you've got no more places to go. And that could be weeks, years into it. I've had cases go into cold status, but that's because there's been no activity, no tips, nothing for several months. Some have taken 2 years, some have taken 5 years, some have taken 10 years.
Phil, if this was, I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm just curious. If this was if you were the lead detective here, let's just say, and you're at day 25 today, what are you telling yourself internally? What are you telling your fellow detectives?
What have we missed anything? Let's go back over everything that we've done so far, and let's double check each other and see if we've missed something. And if not, if we're all sure that we've done everything we can up until now, then let's just keep going on the tips that are coming in. Eventually, somebody's going to come with information, especially with that increase on the reward. They're only going to be loyal to the bad guys for so long. So just keep plugging away. That's what we do. You just keep plugging away. You wake up in the middle of the night and think of something, you write it down and try to go back to sleep, and you work on it in the morning when you get there. You just keep
Joel, can I answer your question about what makes a cold case?
Go for it, Phil Waters. Yes.
Okay, I'll use the criteria we use at HPD, and I don't think it's much different in any other agency. 3-year period, there are no active leads, and there are no witnesses to interview. You've hit the wall. But it's usually given about a 3-year period there for that to happen. If that happens, at least at HPD, it was transferred to our cold case squad, and then they would later review and see if there's anything to look at. Again, is there a new way to analyze DNA? Something new that occurs while it's at cold case, and then they'll pop that sucker open again and pursue that lead. But once that 3-year period is met and you've hit the wall, no leads, no active leads, no witnesses to interview, that's when it goes to a cold case.
Thank you for filling in all that. And so, look, these guys, this is why I'm not the investigator. I'd be banging my head against the wall going, man, I'm never going to solve this. Not these guys. These guys have their eyes on the ball, on the prize, and I've no doubt. And by the way, this is Pima County Sheriffs, the FBI, but you also have Tucson's not. There's a lot of crime in Tucson. I think Bob will tell you that, and they're really good at solving these crimes. Unbelievably good. The Tucson Police Department as well. So you've got to keep the faith, and I do have the faith that it will happen. If you guys appreciate the content here, please hit the like and subscribe button either on the way in or the way out. We're also bringing you the Corey Richens trial live every day. Prof Joe Explains has been helping me while I was out, but I'll be back tomorrow for it. And another absolutely amazing panel here. So I appreciate these guys. Bob Krieger, a brand new best guest, and I hope that you will come back, Bob. He is a retired Pima County Sheriff's Deputy, retired as of January 7th. Bob, are you bored yet? And people are asking, what is the deal with that guitar behind you? Do you shred the guitar on your days off?
Well, I am not bored yet. If I had like an hour, I could tell you the whirlwind of my time since retiring. I had plans that did not include any of this. They included serving Diet Coke and peanuts to people on airplanes as a flight attendant. Yeah, and I started, and some personal issues popped up, so I had to step back.
Hold on, you were going to go become a flight attendant?
Yeah, I had started working for Southwest, first week of training.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my retirement gig.
Why? You enjoy travel? Is that part of it, or what?
I still love people, and I was doing it for the travel as well. So I was gonna do that, and things changed. Some personal stuff, like I said. I get back to Tucson, I get a text message, and it said, "Hey, would you talk to the media?" And basically, for the last 3 weeks, I've been doing nothing but this, and I've really enjoyed it, quite honestly. Really? So thank you for having me on. And quickly on the guitar, when you're a cop for 30 years, you need releases, and music is my number one release. Music and exercise. And so that guitar is actually, I supervised when I was a sergeant. I retired a lieutenant, but I supervised our night detective squad, which would have been the first unit to go to this call if it happened at night. We worked from 3 p.m. until 2 a.m., 7 days a week. So when normal detectives are sleeping, we would go out and handle the calls, triage them. And I did that for 5 years. So, when you leave a unit, people like to give you plaques and stuff like that. Well, people knew about me and my music. So that guitar is actually, it's an Epiphone SG that they got for me. The pick guard is etched with our department logo. And every person who worked for me and with me, not for me, but with me in that unit signed it and put a little message on it. And to this day, that's still the coolest going away from a unit present I've ever received. It meant so much because it was so personal, and it's working. And that's also part of the retirement plan, is I'm going to get so much better at playing them.
Well, look, that says everything about you being a boss, right? That you're getting cool gifts. So kudos to you. Look at this. Erin Elliott, I am a flight attendant with Southwest. I live in Scottsdale. Erin, email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail, and I'll try to connect you here with Bob, and maybe you can get him back. Do you have plans to go back to the flight attending?
So I want to give Southwest a prop. They were so awesome. About my sister passed away, and that's why I had to step away.
I'm so sorry.
They've already offered me spots. I'm putting it on hold right now just because of personal reasons. But I do want to go back, and Phoenix was going to be my home base. And so, Aaron, I hope to fly with you and get online with you one day. That first week of training was exactly what I thought. I kept calling it an academy, and that wasn't an academy, but it was cool. And what we all know an academy as, it's definitely still in the plans.
Wow. Look at this. You could dual roles here. Imagine you're like on a Southwest flight, and your flight attendant is a former SWAT commander and a lieutenant. That's not the flight where you want to mess around and get unruly. So that's amazing. I'm sorry to hear about your sister. That's tragic. But
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, but we would love to have you back. I put everyone on the spot. Will you come back on the show, Bob?
100%. Thank you for having me, and I would love to come back. You might get tired of having me if that's an option.
We will definitely do it. Another great panel. As I tell Karm, I don't do well with transitioning. I mean, from vacation to here. And Karm obviously had a sarcastic remark when I said that. I won't go into details, but I'll be back to normal. Give me like 3 days until I get back to normal. But if you have the means and the desire, the 3 coolest places I've ever been in my life. On our honeymoon, we went to Tanzania and Rwanda. Unreal. And then Iceland is a very close third. We got to climb some glaciers, went to ice caves. It is the closest thing to Mars that Elon Musk, I think, will ever see in his lifetime. It is and a wonderful people. So if you can, check it out. On that note, by the way, there's one comment. We're sisters. One of us watches you from Canada, the other from England, which is why I say it is a global phenomenon. Love you all. Great to be back. Phil Waters, love you, Houston. Love you, Las Vegas, Nevada. And love you, of course, Tucson, Arizona. I'd move back there right away. Bob, my wife, likes Miami a little more. I might have you speak to her. But, Bob, great to have you. And we will be back tomorrow morning with Corey Richins. Be there, be square. By the way, everyone's like, where's Scott Duffy? Him and Phil are set to come on Friday. You're still good, right, Phil Waters?
Yes, indeed.
You're the man. You'll see Scott Duffy and and Phil Waters likely talking about this Friday. We just have to figure out the time. Follow me on Twitter at podcast STS. It's called X, or Instagram at Surviving Survivor. Guest, stick around 1 second.